example of a fast-paced social reform was the spread of Christianity throughout Rome. It all began with a line of emperors who greatly opposed Christian faith. They would kill off those who claimed to be faithful, usually in cruel ways. As you could probably guess, many people were afraid to practice what they believe. This was true until Constantine came along. When he became emperor, he converted to Christianity. This encouraged many others to convert with him. Even in ancient times, celebrities had influence on the common people.
In Athens, women were considered as property as they were with later Rome, but in Athens, their houses were segregated, and while in many ways an opposite of Athens is Sparta, because naturally women held more rights because that was how their city-state functioned. The easiest place throughout ancient Greece to tell how certain events affected people were, I think, would be best explained through Sparta, and easiest because of it was all about doing everything for your city-state, and for example, like children were shipped off when they were very young, around the age of 7, and there was tough love from their family, and there was only 2 ways you would get a gravestone in Sparta, and that was from dying of childbirth if you were a woman, or dying at war if you were a man. Their economy was ran by slaves of the imprisoned from their journeys or dead or whatever, but they never got credit for it. The Greek wars between themselves made them a very aggressive and violent people, which carried on. Romans had that because they were the only foreign culture that they admired in any way. Also, with Alexander the Great's conquest through the Persian, most of the Persian Empire, I think, and they stopped at the Indus Valley, but many Greeks didn't follow them anymore, like because they wanted to get back to their families and stuff like that. So one of these soldiers probably assassinated him, and it undid a lot of what he did, and it split that huge area that they conquered into three or four empires that were ruled by his highest generals.
Out there's a world outside of Yonkers, way out there beyond.
In The Great Gatsby, several characters show that fitting in or standing out is very important. This is evident through all the main characters such as Daisy, Nick, Tom, and Gatsby. Tom feels the need to stand out in society to show his superiority. This is evident through his relationships and his reactions. Upon Gatsby claiming that Daisy was going to leave Tom, he replies, certainly not for the common swindler who would have to steal the ring he put on her finger. Gatsby, who was once part of the lower class, tried and somewhat succeeded at fitting in with the upper class and standing out from the lower class for Daisy. Nick tries to fit in with his surroundings by not objecting to anyone's opinions and reserving all judgment. He moderates the arguments between Gatsby and Tom until he finally sides with Gatsby after Gatsby's death. Fitting in or standing out in the human condition is a common theme throughout literature, because it is human nature. Authors tend to write about what they know in their personal experiences, so this is why it is incorporated into their characters.
But what about the long run? What about entire societies? We are consciously conforming too. A good example of this is the no-soap radio experiment. Take it away, Michael.
Here's how it works. Get a couple of your friends together and tell them to all laugh when you're done telling the joke, no matter what. Then, go find a target who's not in on it and tell them some version of a joke like this. 2 polar bears were sitting in a bathtub. The first one says, "Pass the soap." The second one says, "No soap, radio." At this point, you and your friends should start laughing uproariously, meaning the target has one of 2 choices. Either be afraid of looking dumb and laugh along anyway, Or say they're confused, at which point you should tell them, "What, you don't get it?" and keep laughing. You wait until the target gives in to peer pressure and succumbs to mob mentality and joins, despite the fact that no soap radio is actually nonsense.
If we are so conformist, why do we see these dramatic social changes? Overall, people have natural tendencies to mimic others. We often subconsciously conform. When people around you scratch their heads, you are more likely to scratch your head. We mimic expressions, postures, and voice tones. This is called the chameleon effect. From an evolutionary standpoint, we are more likely to survive in a large group than a small family. Even if we do consider ourselves anti-conformist, we are subconsciously following social norms without even realizing it.
We interviewed several students from the high school, and here's what they had to say.
I try to do both because I like to stand out because it's makes me individual from everyone else. Like, I have my own individuality, but I personally don't want to stand out so much that it draws unwanted attention.
I think it's important to fit in and stand out. I mean, you don't want to be a crazy idiot and seclude yourself from every group possible, but also it's not a good idea to just conform to everybody and kind of be forced to feel like you're somebody you're not. Personally, I think I stand out a lot more, talk a lot. Stop laughing. But again, I fit in a lot of ways with, I can relate to a lot of people, so it helps me with groups of people to hang out with.
You don't really. I mean, there's certain situations, obviously, where you're gonna be like, I'm not like everybody else out here, and there's certain situations where you're gonna be like, I'm just like everybody else, but most of the time you don't know, and I think that's a good thing.
Well, if I'm fitting in, I'm actively trying not to get noticed, and if I'm standing out, I'm really, doing something to be different from everybody else.
Me personally, it's just if I match the surroundings around me, like my friends or the people I interact with on a daily basis, if I'm doing the same things, like dressing the same way, doing the same things, then I'd say I'm fitting in.
I think most people do it just because they don't want to be judged, even though they will be anyway, if they're trying to fit in. They want to be like everybody else because they don't want to be judged. And I think some people try to stand out because they like to be an individual. Either they like attention or that's just how they are.
Because I feel it's important to be a diverse person inside and out.
I just don't want to draw unwanted attention to myself, so I like to stand out.
I think I learned most of my values in elementary school. Obviously my parents helped and stuff, but I feel like you absorb so much when you're little from everybody around you that depending on who you're around when you're little is what you learn and how you learn it. And I think elementary school, as well as my family and people I was around, really helped shape me.
School. Everybody at school is just pretty much the same, so especially in Clarkston.
It's nothing I really learned. It's something that it's not something that your parents sit down and say, "Hey, I'm gonna teach you how to fit in or stand out." It's one of those things that you just kind of naturally, I think you naturally develop. You realize what's too much, putting too much of yourself out there, and you should know what not being outgoing enough is.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think, it's a common cliche for somebody to say, it only takes one, but I truly believe it only takes one person to make a change. There are examples all throughout history of one person making a difference, and that person stood out, and if they would have chose to fit in or just simply be somebody that society forced them to be, who knows where we'd be right now.
I guess, I mean, I feel like if people saw me stand out, then maybe they'd be encouraged to stand out, or they'd be like, wow, she's a misfit. So, I'm sure there's an effect. I don't know if it's good or bad, but...
Because they don't want to stand out. They just want to go with the flow, so they're not noticed.
Just being uncomfortable with the setting, or feeling inadequate in a certain setting.
Fear. I think fear is the driving reason why people choose to not stand up for what they believe. They're afraid of something, they're afraid of somebody, they're afraid of something happening to them. And I feel like if we instill an element of fear in everybody, that nobody's going to have the drive to stand out. So I think that element of fear should be almost erased and aided with comfort from others who choose to stand out.
It's the sense of comfort that you have being in the group of people that you're relying on or like leaning on to like be the same around. It's just something familiar to you, I guess.
Judgment from other people. They're afraid of what other people think of them and what other people want from them.
Yes, and I think it takes a lot of courage and personal confidence to do that, because it's a lot easier to just say yes and go along with the situation, depending on, or especially if the situation has consequences or possibly legal implications or social punishments or things like that. It's important for you to maintain how you truly believe, otherwise you're almost living a lie.